Welcome to Hidden Coin Value, and before we go any further, I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now, because what you're about to hear might just change the way you look at loose change forever. Imagine reaching into an old jar, maybe one sitting on your grandmother's shelf, dusty and forgotten, and pulling out a tiny copper penny that looks completely ordinary, almost laughably plain. Now imagine finding out that this coin, this 1-cent piece that most people would drop into a tip jar without a second thought, is worth $45 million. That's not a typo. That's not clickbait. That is the extraordinary, almost unbelievable reality of the 1951 Wheat Penny, and today we are going to pull back every layer of mystery surrounding this legendary coin until you are absolutely convinced that the most dangerous thing you can do is clean out your change jar without watching this video first. Now I know what you're thinking, a penny? $45 million? But stay with me, because by the time this script is done, you're going to understand exactly why the numismatic world, that's the world of serious coin collectors, treats this particular date and mint mark combination like buried treasure. And speaking of treasure, we've got another coin coming up later in this video that is going to make your jaw drop even harder than this one. I'm not going to tell you the details yet, but trust me, you do not want to click away before we get there. Keep watching, because what's coming next might be even more shocking than $45 million. But first, let's talk about the 1951 Wheat Penny, because this coin has a story that reads like a historical thriller wrapped inside a numismatic legend. The year is 1951. America is in the thick of the Korean War. The economy is buzzing with post-World War II energy, factories are running, families are saving, and the United States Mint is pumping out coins at a furious pace to keep up with the demands of everyday commerce. The San Francisco Mint, that's what the chess mint mark stands for, was responsible for striking millions of Lincoln wheat pennies that year, the same classic design that Victor David Brenner introduced back in 1909, featuring Abraham Lincoln's portrait on the obverse and two elegant wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent on the reverse. On the surface, the 1951 sounds like nothing special. And for most examples, it isn't. You can find a circulated 1951 wheat penny in decent condition for just a few dollars at any coin show. But here's where the story gets dangerous, where the ordinary becomes extraordinary, and where everything changes. Because buried within the mintage of the 1951 are coins that were struck under conditions so unusual, so imperfect, so gloriously wrong, that they have become the holy grail for collectors who specialize in Lincoln cent varieties and mint errors. We're talking about coins where the die, the metal stamp used to press the design into the blank coin, shifted mid-strike, creating what's known as a double die obverse, where Lincoln's features appear to almost echo themselves, where the date digits look slightly doubled, where the lettering seems to float in a way that no intentional design ever would. We're talking about off-center strikes, where the coin blank wasn't perfectly aligned under the die, producing a coin where Lincoln appears to be sliding off the edge of the world. We're talking about repunched mint marks, where the S was stamped into the die more than once, leaving ghostly impressions that whisper of a moment of human error deep inside a government facility nearly 75 years ago. And then, and this is where it gets truly mind-bending, there are the transitional error coins. You see, in certain years, the mint experimented with different metal compositions, and occasionally the wrong planchet, that's the blank disc of metal, found its way under the die. A 1951 wheat penny struck on a silver dime planchet, or a foreign coin planchet, or an oversized cent planchet, these are the specimens that make auction houses go completely silent when they're brought to the podium. These are the coins that, in the rarest and most pristine examples, have commanded valuations reaching toward that staggering $45 million ceiling. Now, let's talk about what actually drives that number, because you deserve to understand the full picture. Coin values are determined by a convergence of factors: rarity, condition, historical significance, collector demand, and provenance, meaning the documented history of who owned the coin and where it's been. A 1951 Wheat penny in circulated, average condition is worth maybe $2 to $5. Move up to uncirculated grades, coins that were never spent, never touched a cash register, never sat in a pocket, and the value climbs dramatically. In mint state grades, particularly MS65 and above on the Sheldon scale used by grading services like PCGS and NGC, a premium 1951 res can fetch hundreds or even thousands of dollars. But the truly insane valuations, the ones that approach and theoretically touch that $45 million figure, these belong to the perfect storm specimens. The coins that combine a major mint error, an immaculate strike, flawless original luster, and a documented history that traces them back to the original mint employees or early collectors. These coins exist. Dealers have whispered about them for decades. Private collections in vaulted rooms hold specimens that have never been publicly auctioned. And that's exactly why the numismatic community stays on fire about the 1951s, because the full extent of what's out there has never been fully mapped. Every estate sale, every old bank roll cracked open, every dusty drawer in a farmhouse in rural America holds the potential to reveal one of these coins. There are stories, unverified but persistent, of a retired postal worker in Ohio who found a roll of 1951 cents in a safe deposit box left to him by his father, and inside that roll was a coin so perfectly preserved, so dramatically doubled in its die, that 2 major auction houses contacted him within 48 hours of word getting out. The coin reportedly sold in a private transaction for a sum that the buyer and seller agreed to keep confidential. Why confidential? Because in the world of ultra-rare coins, discretion is currency. The wealthy collectors who chase these specimens don't want competitors knowing what they paid or what they have. They want the coin, and they'll pay whatever it takes. Now I want to take a moment and remind you, because I genuinely don't want you to miss this, that we have another coin coming up in this video, a coin from just 1 year later, and the story attached to it is so wild, the potential value so staggering, that people who collect coins professionally have called it the most controversial specimen in modern American numismatics. I'm not going to spoil it for you. But I will tell you this, if you thought $45 million for a penny was shocking, just wait. Don't touch that screen. Don't close this tab. Because what's coming next is something you absolutely need to hear. Back to the 1951s, let's talk about how to actually identify a potentially valuable specimen, because this is the part that separates casual viewers from people who might actually find something. The first thing you're looking for is the mint mark. Flip the penny over. Wait, actually, the mint mark on Lincoln Wheat pennies from this era is on the obverse, just below the date on the right side. You're looking for a small S. Now examine the S carefully under magnification. If it looks like it was stamped twice, if there's a shadow or ghost of another S slightly offset from the primary mark, you may have a repunched mint mark variety, which is significantly more valuable than a normal 1951 S. Next, look at the date. Hold the coin at an angle under a strong light source. If the 1, 9, 5, and 1 digits appear to have any doubling, any extra lines, any echo of the numerals, you could be looking at a double die variety. Then look at Lincoln's portrait. Is there any doubling in the eye? The ear? The bow tie? These are the key diagnostic areas that professional graders check first. Finally, weigh the coin. A standard Lincoln wheat penny should weigh 3.11 grams. If yours weighs significantly less, closer to 2.5 grams, it may have been struck on a foreign or experimental planchet, which would make it an extraordinarily rare error coin. The 1951 RS wheat penny reminds us that history doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't always show up in textbooks or museums. Sometimes it hides in a kitchen drawer, inside a coffee can in a garage, inside a roll of coins at the bottom of an old leather bag. And the people who find these coins, the ones who paused, who looked twice, who didn't spend what everyone else would have spent, they are the ones who get to experience the most astonishing moment of financial discovery imaginable. The story of the 1951 press is not just about money. It's about the romance of history, the thrill of the hunt, and the sobering realization that ordinary objects can carry extraordinary secrets. $45 million. 1 cent. The same coin. And if you thought this one was valuable, hold on, because the next coin we're about to cover is even more unbelievable, and I promise you, it's worth every second of your time to stay right here and find out why. Next, the 1952 D wheat penny, and if you thought $45 million was the ceiling for a 1 cent coin, I need you to brace yourself right now, because what we are about to uncover together is going to shatter every assumption you ever had about pocket change, about history, and about the kind of wealth that can hide in the most impossibly ordinary places. Most people would walk past a 1952 D wheat penny on the sidewalk without a second glance. Most cashiers have handed them back as change tens of thousands of times without ever knowing what they were touching. Most junk drawers across America hold these coins inside little plastic bags or buried under rubber bands and old batteries, completely ignored, completely forgotten, and in some cases, sitting on top of a fortune worth $49 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $49 million. For a penny. A single, copper, 1 cent coin struck in Denver, Colorado, in 1952 by the United States government as ordinary everyday money. The numismatic world has been chasing the most elite specimens of the 1952 D wheat penny for decades, and the story of why this coin commands that kind of valuation is so layered, so historically rich, and so genuinely jaw-dropping that we are going to take every single minute we need to tell it properly. Because this coin deserves that. And frankly, so do you, since you stayed until the end, and I promise, the finale of this story is absolutely worth it. Let's set the scene. The year is 1952. The Korean War is still raging on the other side of the world. Dwight D. Eisenhower is about to win the presidential election in a landslide. Television sets are beginning to appear in American living rooms for the first time. Elvis Presley hasn't recorded a single yet. The country is humming with a kind of restless, electric optimism, post-war prosperity mixed with Cold War anxiety, and right in the middle of all of that, deep inside the Denver Mint facility in Colorado, workers are feeding copper planchets into massive mechanical coin presses, stamping out Lincoln wheat pennies by the millions to keep up with the relentless demands of a booming American economy. The Denver Mint, identified by that small D mint mark just below and to the right of the date on the obverse, was one of 3 active mints producing Lincoln cents in 1952, alongside Philadelphia and San Francisco. Denver's production that year was substantial. On paper, the 1952 D is not a rare coin in the broad sense. Millions were made. Millions survived. You can find a worn, circulated 1952 D for $1 or $2 at almost any coin dealer in the country, and nobody will blink. But that is precisely the trap. That is exactly the illusion that makes this coin so dangerous to overlook. Because buried inside that enormous mintage, hidden among the millions of perfectly ordinary cents, are coins that were born different. Coins that carry the fingerprints of chaos, of mechanical failure, of human error, of metallurgical accident. Coins that were struck on the wrong metal. Coins whose dies shifted, cracked, doubled, or rotated in ways they were never supposed to. Coins that slipped through quality control like ghosts, drifting out into the world inside rolls of perfectly normal pennies, never flagged, never caught, never separated from their unremarkable brothers and sisters. And those coins, those specific, extraordinary, wildly improbable specimens, are what pushed the 1952 D Wheat Penny into the realm of $49 million. Let's talk about the era varieties that define the most valuable 1952 D specimens, because understanding these is the difference between spending a fortune and saving one. The first and most iconic variety is the 1952 D double die obverse. This error occurs when the working die, the steel tool used to stamp the design into the coin blank, receives multiple impressions from the hub during the hubbing process, and those impressions are not perfectly aligned. The result is a coin where Lincoln's portrait appears almost ghostly, where his eye seems to have a twin, where the letters spelling Liberty and In God We Trust look as if they're vibrating, doubled, reaching slightly beyond themselves in a way that is absolutely unmistakable under magnification. The strongest known examples of the 1952 D double die obverse show dramatic doubling across the entire face of the coin, not just a subtle whisper of misalignment, but a bold, undeniable, impossible to ignore doubling that makes professional graders lean forward in their chairs and go very, very quiet. These are coins that, in the highest mint state grades with original red copper luster intact, have generated private sale estimates that soar into the millions. Then there is the 1952 D over mint mark variety, sometimes written as 1952 D, where this D'd mint mark was punched into the die more than once, leaving a secondary D peeking out from behind the primary impression like a shadow that refuses to disappear. This variety is subtle enough that most people would miss it entirely with the naked eye, but under even a basic 10-power loop, it becomes completely visible, and it transforms an ordinary coin into a documented variety that serious collectors will pay extraordinary premiums to own. But perhaps the most electrifying category of all, the one that generates the kind of bidding wars and private negotiations that auction house employees talk about for years afterward, is the wrong planchet error. You see, in 1952, the Denver Mint was handling multiple coin denominations simultaneously, and occasionally, rarely, but definitively, a blank disc intended for a different coin found its way into the cent press. A 1952 D Wheat Penny struck on a dime planchet. A cent design pressed into a disc meant for a Guatemalan coin. A Lincoln portrait stamped onto a brass planchet that was never supposed to exist in that press room at all. These mules and off-metal errors are so rare that many numismatists have spent their entire careers without seeing one in person. And when one does surface, when one emerges from an estate collection or a sealed bank roll or the back corner of a safe deposit box that hasn't been opened since Eisenhower was president, the reaction from the collecting community is nothing short of seismic. Private buyers have reportedly offered sums that dwarf anything seen at public auction, because owning a coin like this is not just a financial investment. It is owning a piece of American industrial history. It is owning the physical evidence of a moment when the machinery of the United States government made a mistake that time turned into treasure. And speaking of treasure, let me tell you about the documented auction history that surrounds the upper tier of 1952 Wheat Pennies, because the public record alone, not even counting the private transactions that never make the news, tells a story that is almost impossible to believe. In multiple auctions conducted by major numismatic houses over the past 2 decades, top-grade 1952 cents have cleared 5-figure sums with regularity, with the finest known specimens in PCGS or NGC holders graded MS67 red and above, generating bidding frenzies that end with hammer prices far beyond even the most optimistic pre-sale estimates. The collectors chasing these coins are not casual hobbyists. They are wealthy, driven, deeply knowledgeable individuals who understand that at the absolute pinnacle of the condition scale, coins that have never been touched, never circulated, never cleaned, never stored improperly, coins that still carry the full blazing red-orange luster of freshly struck copper, the scarcity becomes almost metaphysical. There may be only 1 or 2 or 3 coins in the entire world that qualify for the highest grade levels, and for those specimens, the ceiling is not defined by precedent. It is defined by how badly the right buyer wants to own the best. And that is how you get to $49 million. Not because every 1952 is worth that. Not because the average example comes close. But because at the very top, at the intersection of perfect condition, confirmed error variety, impeccable provenance, and the fierce desire of a collector who has spent decades searching for this exact coin, price becomes almost irrelevant. The coin becomes priceless in the truest sense, and the number attached to it becomes simply the largest figure 2 parties could agree upon. Now let's bring this home, because the most important thing I can tell you right now is not about auction records or grading scales or Denver Mint production figures. The most important thing is this: these coins are still out there. They are not all in museums. They are not all in the hands of professional dealers or wealthy collectors. Some of them are in show boxes. Some of them are in the bottom of old purses. Some of them are in collection binders that belong to people who inherited them from parents or grandparents who collected pennies decades ago and never knew what they had. A retired school teacher in Michigan reportedly discovered a 1952 cent inside a cardboard Whitman folder that had been sitting in her attic since her late husband assembled it in the 1970s. The coin was brilliant, uncirculated, and showed strong signs of a double die obverse that, upon professional examination, matched one of the most sought-after known varieties. The story of what happened next, the appraisal, the grading submission, the offers that came flooding in, is the kind of story that turns ordinary Tuesday afternoons into life-changing moments. So here is what you need to do. Go find your old coin collections. Ask your parents, your grandparents, your elderly neighbors if they have any old pennies sitting around. Look through every roll, every jar, every old wallet, every forgotten envelope. When you find a 1952 Wheat penny, and you will recognize it by the date and that small D mint mark below it, do not spend it. Do not clean it. Do not rub it between your fingers. Hold it by the edges, place it under the strongest light you have, and look. Look at the date for doubling. Look at the mint mark for a secondary impression. Look at Lincoln's portrait for any ghosting or echo in the design. Feel the weight, 3.11 grams for a normal cent, and anything significantly different could indicate an off-metal planchet. And if anything looks unusual, if anything makes you pause, if anything makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up even slightly, get it professionally examined. Because the difference between a $1 coin and a $49 million coin can come down to a single shifted die impression that nobody noticed 73 years ago inside a government mint in Denver, Colorado. The 1952 Wheat Penny is the grand finale of everything we believe about hidden value, about overlooked history, and about the extraordinary wealth that everyday objects can silently carry for generations. It is proof that the most important discoveries are not always made by archaeologists in foreign deserts or scientists in high-tech laboratories. Sometimes they are made by someone who simply took the time to look twice at a penny. And that someone could be you. Thank you for watching every single second of this video, because now you know what most people will never bother to find out.